Hey everybody, it's Liz here. I'm so excited. I'm about to interview Sarah Jones. Hello, family. Hello, hello. Hi everybody in the whole world. This is the part where I try to remember how to do things. Let's see, add moderator, turn off requests, turn on questions. If your name is not Sarah Jones and you are not a Tony Award-winning actor, writer, and director, please do not send me a request to join this conversation. Why is it that I can never... Thanks for the comments on the glasses. Let's see. Search for... Okay, here we go. I'm going to search for Sarah... Yes, I'm Sarah Jones. Okay, I'm sending her a message. Oh my gosh. Now they want to sell me something. Okay. I sent Sarah Jones a message. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. Are you there, Sarah Jones? How is everyone? Hi, Barcelona, Spain. We're about to have an incredible conversation with the great actor, writer, director, documentarian, producer, activist, Sarah Jones, one of my most favorite people. You guys might remember her if you saw her. Thanks for saying that I've got this. I so don't got this, but I'm here anyway. Hi, Ukraine. We are sending you our heart. Hi, Chile. We love you. Oh, yes, I'm Sarah Jones. Okay, I think here it is. Okay, here's... Oh my God, it's happening. This is always so nerve-wracking. I said yes. There she is. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Can you hear?
Yay. I hear you beautiful.
So
Oh,
bear it.
wait, so this is going to be bumpy. It's a rough ride here. Hold on.
Life is
Okay.
a rough ride, Sarah Jones. We know this. Well, now I just see your ceiling, which is gorgeous.
Okay. If I just paused, I hope I was making I don't know. Hi. I just want to say hi.
Hi. Okay, we hear you. I hear you. Whoops, now there's your beautiful hand.
There's going to be a lot happening. We thought we had a tripod. I'll just say life is messy and life is in session, as you say. And I think I might have that one from you. And
you did, but you can have it.
I borrow it. I feel like we are co-custodians of so many that we've walked back and forth over the years. But I'm sure it says eroticize equality, which is something that I also feel like you and I and your adoring book club share. So those are my... Hi, Liz. I love you so. And I have this out.
This is so good. Now, you're coming in a little tiny bit choppy. Do you happen to have maybe earbuds that you could use? Would that be helpful?
That might be helpful. I'm coming in choppy and I need earbuds. Does anybody see my... Here's the other possibility. Is this any less choppy?
No, but it's way more gorgeous. I'm not sure I can handle it.
Well,
I think it's less choppy. Get in there. Let's see.
Okay, let's try.
I got a comment one time from somebody that said, like, your face this close up is a little alarming. Do you mind backing up? Somebody said that to me once on an Instagram live, and I was like, that hurts me.
If you can't see my pores, we have of intellectual course that I'm hoping for. No, I'm going to try to see help with the choppiness, and then maybe I can zoom out so that I'm not giving you all access to my pores when that wasn't my intention.
Okay, this is better.
Is this better?
Yay, this is better.
Okay.
All right, everybody, let's go. This is Sarah Jones. Everybody, Sarah Jones is coming to us live on the night of the screening of her incredible film that she has just made. I can't believe you're here with us when you have to go basically be on a red carpet in like 11 minutes.
This is the only place I want to be.
Oh my God, it's so good. Everyone, can you do me a favor and just send up a huge amount of love and hearts for Sarah and let her know how much we love her? And then I'm going to turn the comments off. But just, let's see, here it is. Look at all that. You see all that? You see all that?
I need it. I see it. I need it. I receive it with so much gratitude.
We love you. Hi, the isolation journal. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to turn this off now, and then it's just going to be the two of us. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, probably mostly ladies, but some
probably. And I forgot my Lorraine glasses and anyway, there were some folks I wanted to bring along on the journey that I might have to ask if anyone can give me the glasses that are in the closet there. They're in a props bag in the closet. Welcome to the
These are my Lorraine glasses. I'm trying to live in honor of her.
I was going to say, she's admiring your glasses game is quite strong. But there should be a bunch of, you can bring me the whole bag. The whole bag is fine, or Lorraine or Bella or anybody who wants to come join us. This is perfect. Thank you. Wow. Listen, The angels, I'm going to stop interrupting our time with logistics that I didn't quite sort out. Have I told you that imperfection is the new, professionalism? Yeah, I almost did that, but I was like, imperfection is the new professional. I don't know. Hi, Liz. I don't ever have to be professional around you. Thank God.
No, you don't, because you are my beloved friend and you are my sister, and I love you with all my heart. And for those of you who do not know who Sarah Jones is, let me just introduce you to her. Sarah Jones is, and I'm going to get really formal here for a second because I want to catch everybody up, is the Tony Award winning performer, writer, comedian, activist, actor, the creator of the smash Broadway hit Bridge and Tunnel, and the critically acclaimed amazing play that I saw when it was a play and that is now a film that is called Sell by Date, which we're going to be discussing today, which was produced by a little somebody I like to call Meryl Streep. She is known as a one-woman global village because of her incredible ability to disappear into a multitude of characters. I love her for her compassion, for her talent, for her activism, for her radiance, for her genius, and her TED Talks have been viewed by millions and millions of people, including me, millions and millions of times, because I met her at the TED conference years ago, and I fell in love with you then, and we have been in love ever since. She was a guest on my short-lived, but I think very precious podcast, Magic Lessons, and we are here tonight to talk about this extraordinary work of art that you have made, and it is called Sell by Date, and it is based on your hit one-woman, incredibly critically acclaimed play that is about the sex industry. That is a very general way to say it, but it's about the contradictions and the power dynamics and the racism and the money of the sex industry. Not a small topic for you to have taken on. I saw it live. I was so extraordinarily moved by it. And then you made this documentary. Now, also, for those of you who don't know Sarah, Sarah is not just one person. Sarah is many people. She is famous for being able to imbibe characters. Could one of your characters come and join us, please, for a moment?
Well, hi there. Can everybody hear me in Instagram land? Listen, I was going to say, Sarah loves you, Liz, so much. Look, the love is turning the phone. I'll tell you this. When we met you, my name is Lorraine. Sarah plays characters from different backgrounds. She's a very nice young Black performer, as you just saw. She calls herself Black. She's really more of a kind of a caramel color if you look at the skin.
Anyway, I grew up with relatives. Lorraine is based loosely on one of my real relatives, and everybody said whatever they wanted to say across racial differences and religious differences. I am a one-woman race relations summit, I think.
Yeah. Could we meet Narita for a minute? Because she's always been my favorite. And I love her, and she and I have a special bond. So if you could please bring her on, that would be great.
Well, first of all, I call you Luz. Luz means light in Espanol. My name is Nereida. I'm sure that you have some, incredible, I actually would love to talk about you about this at some point, but I think about your fans who, for those of us who are bilingual and we get to read your words translated, I just want to tell you, in case you don't know this, your writing is just as dope in Espanol as it is in English, just in case you wondered about that. I know dope is not the most literary, but the whole point is that I love you in part because you reach into
the psyche of your characters in this way that is so, you know, the relatability to me, like the idea that intelligence can sound any kind of way. There's a lot of people that would, you know, underestimate me because I am half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. I'm all proud, but they hear an accent and they assume, am I literary? Your work speaks to the kind of, I would just call it the democratized literary beauty that we all get to enjoy with this Onward Book Club. So I just want you to know I'm fangirling out. I love you. You are my luz, como siempre. And I'm so excited to be here. And Sarah Jones has Dominican cousins. I just wanted to be here for you. So I'm so glad that you asked for me by name.
You know I love you.
Muchísimas gracias.
For those of you who have not seen Sarah before, this is what she does. Like, she does this thing where she vanishes into people of different ages and different cultures, and she tells stories of the world through those people. What you did in Sell by Date was to, in the play, and let's first talk about the play that you wrote and that you performed. You used all of these characters to investigate every possible angle of the sex industry and what it means for women, and and who's running it and who's in charge of it, and is there such thing as agency? Is there such thing as women being in control of themselves, of their destiny in the sex industry?
Mm-hmm.
What, you know, like this incredibly talking about exploitation and about power and about race and about agency and this amazing thing. And then you decided to make a film about it, which I rejoiced at when I heard, and other people did too. And then all of a sudden you found yourself, before the film had even begun, you found yourself at the center of a controversy that could only happen in this moment in history on the internet. And could you tell us about the controversy that happened before you even had a chance to begin filming?
Yeah, I thank you for kind of distilling my goals with the play in the first place, right? To have a conversation about who we all are, women, sex, power dynamics in commerce, and what happens when there's an industry where it's mostly women doing the selling and mostly, you know, hetero men doing the buying, and what does that all look like, and why it's so stigmatized in a slut shaming, you know, kind of dumpster fire of a society where we literally have, you know, the former orange inhabitant of the White House. I like to call him Trumpster fire, but I already said dumpster fire. But, you know, here is this man who right next to him was Stormy Daniels, you know, somebody who worked in the sex industry. And yet as a country, we pretend it's, you know, sort of not there, or we sweep it somewhere. Talking about all of this felt so important to me for many reasons, which I hope people will see the film and understand. It's personal for me. It's also kind of global. But when it was announced that a film inspired by the play, because it's not a direct adaptation of the play, when that was announced with a high profile team, the response, understandably, from people who have, you know, often been maligned or, you know, mischaracterized across our, you know, different media, you know, people who are in the sex industry, sex workers, there was a fear that I and the other collaborators I was working with were going to appropriate their stories, leave them out, you know, and further harm the kind of larger sort of experience that they're having in the culture. And it was a fierce backlash. They made it very clear to me that, and I want to say it was a very small but very vocal group of people whom I learned to, you know, respect, talk to, ask, okay, I hear you. Please don't cancel me. I'm actually trying to be part of a conversation that listens to you. So if you break my wrist, I can't hold the microphone and talk to you. But I think there was this just, you know, fear after, again, what I understand is far too much being limited and marginalized and, you know, dehumanized in our storytelling. So I got why it happened. I still wish they hadn't like called all my funders and been like, take her money away, cancel her. But miraculously, the film evolved into what it is anyway. So I'm grateful.
Well, I think that what makes, and great description of what happened, and that must have been terrifying and horrifying, where the very people who you're attempting to bring a spotlight to and bring awareness to and give voice to are suddenly saying, as Lotus Lane, who is an adult entertainer and a leader in this community, said, and it's in the movie, she says, you're on the outside, you're a civilian, you do not understand what it is we go through to be telling our stories. And yet Tish Roberts, who's a human rights activist who works in the sex industry, says to you moments later in the film, and she comes from the same background of this same experience, says it's so important that you tell this story it's so important that this story comes out. What I admire so much about what you've done with this film is that the first half of the film, to me, felt like you're laying out this problem, which is, how do you make this film? It becomes very meta. You're actually, I feel like the film is sort of a snapshot of this cultural moment in history where questions of appropriation, questions of who has the right to tell certain stories, questions of like you're stepping on the toes of people that you have no right to, all of this is so vocal, and the internet where everything gets magnified, and where everyone, no matter how correct your politics are, is terrified of being canceled. And everyone is terrified of making some sort of a wrong move. It's such a volatile environment. And instead of running from it, which I would have done, I don't even say that like hypothetically. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm out. Like the minute that conversation begins, I'm like, excuse me, never mind. I'll go do something else with my time. I don't want to be in the middle of a dumpster fire. You went into the dumpster fire. And the first half of the film is you taking your camera and your characters and going right into the center of talking to the very people who had been tweeting against you to say, like, help me understand this better. What kind of courage did it take, or was it curiosity that it took for you to do that? How did you get the chutzpah to do that?
Chutzpah. It's funny. I'm like, is it called self-flagellation or like
It's a thin line between chutzpah and self-flagellation.
A little bit. Thin line between like, I'm willing to take the beating. But I really think it was, and I love the way you lifted it out, Liz, that, Tish Roberts is one woman with lived experience in the sex industry. And Lotus Lane is another woman with lived experience in the sex industry. Both Black women, both have their own unique experiences, both brilliant. And the way you set it up is like one person says, please keep telling this story. The other says, watch it. They're both right. And I think that was I'm very much, sort of like, I know what my politics are. I'm very clear where we all need to be around the midterms. Like there's no gray area for me usually. And what I needed to do here was remember a few things. One, it ain't about me. I cannot put being liked or being understood above the mission that I have been given for whatever reason. I don't know what I did in a former life or why I came into this life wanting to tell these stories. And again, if people see the film, you'll see my very personal connection to the topic and my own, I wanted to strip in college. And I want to say for folks, experiencing this live, we as a society have a range, whether it's, the wholesome family who goes to a football game and then has wings at Hooters. I want to be like, hey, you're having a side of sex industry with your wings. Just so you know, like this is all a continuum of selling sex, selling women, our women having the right and having the need or the choice to sell our bodies in a, kind of patriarchal culture where men have most of the money. And so we're going to be the ones, trying to earn that money from them, not the other way around the vast majority of the time. I want to remind people that this is an urgent topic for a lot of people, whether it's because they're in the work themselves and want better conditions, or whether it's because there are girls who are vulnerable, particularly Black and brown girls. And there's so much that I learned. But as I went more into the topic, I realized it doesn't matter whether I want to have the courage. My job is to feel the discomfort, remember that there are lots of other women who are very uncomfortable for lots of other reasons, and maybe I can just keep going in solidarity with them and hope that whatever I make is useful to someone in a way that all the other stuff I've ever seen about this topic is either surface. Love you, Julia Roberts. Can't wait to see the thing with, George Clooney. But if anyone ever watched Pretty Woman, it's very romanticized. There's fantastic thigh-high boots, but none of the violence or the other issues that I've encountered in this topic are there. And so a sanitized version of this story, or a version where the women themselves are never heard, it's a long lens on a I don't know, CSI or SVU police episode where like the women aren't human. They're just a kind of in the back of a van and they're vaguely from Eastern Europe or Asia and we don't care about their humanity. So I wanted to finally, I hoped, watch something or create something that people could watch and connect with the characters in a new way.
You did. And your documentary, to its credit, raised more questions for me than it gave me answers. And I wonder if it did that for you as well. And I'll just share that 25 years ago, when I was a journalist working at GQ, I took on an assignment to write an article about this radical new thing that was happening, that had just started happening in the late 90s, that was being called feminist pornography,
Yes.
which was like women making this product. So instead of women being instead of women just being used for this product, this very lucrative product, this multi-billion-dollar a year product, instead of their bodies simply being used to be viewed by men, they were getting behind the camera and creating their own films. And I fell into the same moral dilemmas that you fell into here, which is this agency? Like, is this like the complications of this were so huge, and it was only just beginning 25 years ago, and now it's just expanded to where you've got women who are owning businesses. You talked to Alice Little, who runs the what's the name of the ranch? Sorry, I forgot. The
chicken ranch, and she doesn't run it, but she was the top. She was like as successful as you could be, $1 million in client, really top of the game.
Which is, legalized prostitution exists in Las Vegas, and this is a huge brothel, and she speaks to you, and she's a phenomenally successful businesswoman, and you can't discredit, like, not only the fact that she's a phenomenally successful businesswoman, but she's showing you how clean the operation is and how they've got doctors' offices on the site, and they've got like bells that the women can ring if they feel like they're in any danger, and somebody will come in, and all of a sudden it's like, well, this seems like a really good idea. Like, if people are going to be paying people to have sex, then they might as well have it in safe surroundings. The women might as well be taken care of. They might as well be invested in it, as with Evan Steinfeld, who's created this whole huge industry of like letting people make and control their own films that they're creating. So all that starts to sound like a good idea, but then you go and you talk to other people who have experienced the sex industry and who speak about the violence and the degradation and the fact that they didn't enter into this by choice, but because it was the only choice. And for especially Black and brown girls, often this path is not some sort of enlightened feminist decision, but the only path that they might be able to take. And then the whole argument for decriminalizing prostitution falls apart again. So I feel like throughout the film, you're going in these waves of like, is this the answer? Is this the answer? Is this the answer? And what did you settle on? Or did you settle?
Yeah, it's so funny. In the movie itself, Nereda, the person that I was here earlier, I'm going to step away, but Nereda is frustrated with me and says, you want to be a hovercraft, right? I don't want to land anywhere. I just want to hover. The thing is, I know that there's more information, there's more conversation to be had. And I've been thinking so much about the kind of 30,000 foot view, that if we live in a society where healthcare, education, access to housing, and where we get rid of this incredible prison industrial complex that we know is basically kind of warehousing mostly Black and brown human beings for profit, right? It has nothing to do with morality or keeping anyone safe. So when we live in a society that looks like that, and even as you were talking about the safer conditions in the brothel in Nevada where it's legal, and I was thinking, there are a lot of people who don't have safety working at Walmart or working, at Amazon. And so we really have to be honest about how much just capitalism itself, before you add sex, we have to talk about exploitation all the way around and acknowledge that. And I want us to live in a world where women have all the choices you know, that they could possibly need. And when they choose, I'm a dom, I'm a sex worker, I want to strip, I enjoy dancing, you know, without my clothes on and making dudes pay me money. That is my thrill. That is my calling. I want that. And I just think that we need to be honest about whether we are there. Where are we? And I want to hear from the Lotus Lanes and Alice Little at the Chicken Ranch brothel, and, you know, Esperanza Fonseca, the activist who was a very, you know, staunch supporter of decriminalizing the entire sex trade. And then she said, oh, but wait, what if pimps and johns and people who are violent toward women and keeping the money that women themselves should be earning and keeping, what if we're actually expanding their rights? So these are all questions. And I really want it to be clear that there are still folks attacking me as anti-sex work or anti-sex worker, when really what I am is pro-woman, pro, you know, democracy, and pro access to the justice that we claim we're founded on as a society, but that, you know, all of a sudden, like, we all protested in the streets in 2020, acknowledging that, you know, devaluing lives like George Floyd's life to the point where he wasn't safe to be on the streets from the police whose his tax dollars pay for, right? We understand the racism, the violence of a society that devalues people that way. But as soon as it's about women and sex and, you know, that transactional relationship, suddenly we all just want to pretend that those things aren't factors, and they are. And I just want us to be able to have an honest conversation about who's choosing and what and why. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Beautifully, beautifully said. Speaking of what we were founded on as a country, to me, the most moving part of the film is toward the end, when you go out into the Nevada desert and you speak to Indigenous women from that exact landscape, the original inhabitants of this country. And of course, Indigenous women are the ones who are in most danger of being exploited, of being victims of violence, of not having access to their bodies, not being safe, essentially. There's a line that one of the women says that, and perhaps you can remind us if you remember who it was who said it, because I didn't write down who said it, but it was so starkly awakening to me. She said, in our language, we have no words. We don't have the word pimp. We don't have a word for Johns. We don't have any of the language that's associated with this business transaction of selling women's bodies for profit. It's not a thing that we ever did in our culture. So we don't have any of the words around it. This is one of those moments where I was so grateful to be given access to a set of voices who I typically would not hear from, on an issue that I know very little about, and to have an awakening. My assumption was that this is the world's oldest profession, that, you know, that prostitution and sex work have been around for as long as human beings have been around. That's a huge assumption to make, to assume that every single culture has been as distorted and unhealthy as ours is, as Western civilization has been, about the commoditization of women's bodies, that it might not necessarily be the case that every single culture has shared this idea. I was shocked to think of that, and I was also shocked that I had never thought of that. That I'm so enmeshed in this sex and money based society that, to me, all of this feels weirdly normal. And I wondered if you could speak to that, and if you could speak also to those women who you met and what it meant for you. It was also, I felt like, the most vulnerable you were, not as a performer, but as a listener, was in that moment where you allowed those voices to be heard. So I wondered if you could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I really want to start by saying, I want to be clear that I am not pathologizing anyone who is doing work in the sex industry, right? I really want to make clear that the slut shaming, the stigmatizing, the marginalizing of women who have chosen, you know, whatever life they've chosen is not my agenda. Like, I want to lift up every woman who's doing whatever it is she wants to be doing and hear from her. I want to start there. And I had never heard this. I had never heard that. Jen Marley is the activist who said, you know, in most native languages, there's not a word for prostitution. And I was like, what? Like, you know, I thought back to, and then my mind was like, oh yeah, you're thinking back to Christopher Columbus and, you know, the mythology,
the Roman Empire upon which we are based. Yes, exactly.
Pretty much, right? I mean,
a slave-based empire. Yeah,
pretty much. And the idea that, again, everybody gets to self-define. Everybody gets to say what their language is, how they, you know, are experiencing their path through this industry if they're in it. I want to hear that. And hearing from the activists I talked to in the desert, it just blew my mind. I had never heard of the possibility of a world, because like you said, the oldest profession, right? And now I've come to say this thing that like, oh, I thought it was the oldest profession. It's really the oldest conversation we're not having in an honest way. It's been here throughout time. We have, you know, Woody Allen films and Lolita narratives and all kinds of narratives around the relationship between, you know, cis hetero men and their desire for women's bodies and the transactional nature of that and the businesses that, you know, have kind of flourished around that. And when do those still give men all the power? White men, usually, I have to say, even though, right, I grew up with hip hop and like pimp imagery was huge, you know, 90s, 2000s, it was like, pimp my everything, pimp my ride, pimp my bagel, pimping, you know, it was great. And then you sit back and you're like, oh, wait, this is problematic. I was talking to another wonderful feminist I love who's a French speaker, and she was reminding me that putain, which I speak French, if you speak French, putain is like the standard curse word for everything from I broke a nail to, you know, my car broke down. Ah, putain, putain. It means whore. It's in Spanish too, puta. The idea that a whore is this core basic part of our society that we as women are even raised to sort of, you know, see ourselves on a continuum of, oh God, anything but that. It's the worst thing you could be called when I was a kid. And around all of this, there's never been the idea of, wait a minute, what if there's a way to have healthy erotica, the feminist porn you mentioned? I went to Bryn Mawr College. There was feminist porn being made like on campus or slightly off campus. And I remember, like I said, I wanted to strip. I wanted to have an ironic, you know, riot girl, Doc Martens, you know, like I wanted to be a combat booted, exotic dancing. I didn't know what I wanted, in part because in patriarchy, it's very hard to have your own relationship to this that isn't reactivity to misogyny. And so that's what I'm interested in. Like, how can we bring in those voices of Native folks, of folks who have lived experience and are saying, hey, we want to do it. We just need to retain the power ourselves. I'll say this quick thing. OnlyFans, huge, right? The guy who owns it, and I have to check these facts, but they made something like $800 million, huge, huge business during the pandemic. And it sounds really great until I found out that basically the way the economic model works, this old white guy who owns this business made all this money. It looks like it's being distributed to women and, you know, helping lift people up. Turns out on average, because they have so many content providers, they're actually only paying out like $40 a person on average. And I'm just saying, is this really the way forward? Is this the great career path we think it is as it exists now? And if not, can we at least talk about it without shaming or blaming each other or anybody? So that's my incredibly long way of trying to wrap that inquiry and your experience of it in love, because I loved hearing them. It was incredible and confusing.
Yeah. You like to do simple things.
Really simple. I like to keep it real. Just give me a check.
You like to just take like really simple ideas and do really simple things around really simple, easy things. Like that's kind of thing about you. Just real, yeah.
I like to, you know, easy breezy, relaxed.
Yeah. You like to keep it simple. On the note of that, on a logistical note, how did you make this film? Because, you know, again, let's go back to like, you're covering these huge complex issues. you're traveling all over the country. First of all, this film is like a fever dream sometimes, because it's like I feel like this film is like a tour of the inside of Sarah Jones's mind, like, so, like, on one hand, you're having these, incredibly respectful and complex and beautiful and intimate conversations with these Indigenous women, these difficult conversations with former and current sex workers. You're going deep into your own personal life and your family's history and association with the idea of transactional relationships between men and women, relationships with your mother. And then suddenly you're in a cafe with Bryan Cranston. And then suddenly Alana Glacier's there. Like it's all happening at the same time. And you're playing 5 different characters as you're doing this, 5 completely different characters who are often in the room at the same time. So, and you did it during COVID. Am I wrong? Like, you were filming this during a pandemic. So how did you, and you wrote it and you directed it. So you're behind the camera, you're playing 5 different roles. You're also doing this, like, it's a comedy, by the way, in addition to being like a heartbreaking documentary. It's a tour de force of performance, and you're directing it, and you're dealing with a social media whiplash. But I guess my biggest question is, how did you do the scenes where you've got 5 of your characters in a limousine and you're playing all of them talking to each other at the same time? Did you do the whole scene through like 5 different, like, I can't even imagine how you do. I'm a novelist, Sarah. I sit in a quiet room by myself with a cup of tea, and I make something, and when I'm done with it, 2 years later, I give it to somebody and they publish it. I have no idea how people make things. And to try to figure out how you made something this complex is mind-blowing to me.
Well, I am one of the many who are so grateful that you sit with your cup of tea and then you birth it into the world and we all get to rejoice. That's right. I don't have my tea. I have some water with a straw in it so I can preserve my little lipstick here. But I wish, now I have to send you, even if it's just privately, I will text you the meme of me as Lorraine Levine waiting for room tone and sipping tea. So I will send you that later. But I will say I had incredible collaborators who helped me, who taught me. I'm a first-time director. I had a vision, and thank gods, goddesses, trans gods, I was so naive that I thought, if I can see it in my head, then it can be on a screen, and nobody discouraged me. And we have this wonderful cinematographer, Joshua Weinstein, just brilliant. He looked at what I did, what I was doing, and said, we can do this. This is possible. We can do it on a shoestring. And I believed him. And then we naively, kind of barreled forward into the pandemic, masks everywhere, COVID protocols, all the things. And I will remind myself, so hi, everyone has met Nareda already and Lorraine, and I didn't.
Hi, Bella.
Hi, Liz. I love you so much. This is so wild. My mom's totally watching this live. But anyway, like, I just want to say that, like, being in a kind of Greek chorus was like the idea, air quotes, to like hear a bunch of different opinions. I think Sarah Jones felt very strongly about like getting all of the characters into the frame, which is something she can't do when we're like live on stage. That was like, she wanted to use the medium that way to like make sure we were all like, frankly, arguing with each other. Because she's sort of, I guess, masochistic at this point. I don't even know. All right. So anyway, the whole.
Can you tell everybody who they just met who Bella is? Because Bella or Bella, maybe you can tell us who you are.
Well, she's talked enough. She's a very proud sex work studies major, and she feels strongly about, this argument that she's been having with her mother and with other feminists in her life about how they just don't get it, that sex work is real work, it's empowering work, and she feels very strongly about it. And she and Nereda get to kind of duke it out almost in the film. Oh, and I am struggling between the two of them. And of course, all of these voices are sort of, outward representations of my own kind of confused. I mean, I have, there's Rashid.
Was good, y'all. Liz.
Hi, Rashid.
I want to call you my girl, but then that, I don't want to get all, I'm just saying, we don't have to talk about ethical non-monogamy, polyamory, whatever. But I love you. I love, you know what I mean? I love you like that. You know what I mean?
How's business, Rashid? This was like, you looked like you were really going to like start something up in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm just saying it was a lot of attractive, you know, what I'm saying propositions, if you will. I don't want to, I don't want to be too, I don't want to show my hand like they say in Vegas. But let's just say I understand if I, as a dude, want to have, you know what I mean, like a fulfilling sexual experience. I want to make sure it's consent. That's all I'm saying. If you know what I mean, if I need to reach in my pocket, I ain't gonna have no shame about that, but I want to make sure it's good. If you know what I mean, I want to make sure the ladies is good, or women, females, whatever is the appropriate term I'm supposed to be using right now. I don't want to get canceled.
Okay, so that's enough of him. But you know, the idea is that ultimately, and Bryan Cranston says this in the film, I think in such a poignant way. You know, men, like across the gender spectrum, we all are trying to connect. We are all trying to be human in an often inhumane world that teaches us from the time we're tiny that we're probably not enough. And when you mix in later in life fears about, you know, everything from money, like I said, if we lived in a society where everybody's basic needs were met, then I think we'd have a completely different conversation about sex and transactions and, you know, the marketplace. Now I think I don't want to shut anything down. I just want to open it up. I just want to talk about where we really are, and is what we're doing now serving all of us as well as it could? That's the question.
One of the questions that I think is the most fascinating thing to explore is what do we each do individually about the problem of sex? Like, you know what I mean?
How much
It's
time
like,
do we have for this live, Liz? Do we have
what do we like? What do we all do? How do we all handle it? Like, you know, we have these like these rational minds, we have these spiritual beings, and then we have these bodies and these hormones and these desires that often frighten us. You know, or we don't have any desire, which often frightens us, or we desire what we don't want, which is super frightening. It's like, well, the only thing that turns me on is this, and that's like seems really inappropriate because it's not in alignment with my, you know, like who I am as a human being. But you know, what I think is fascinating right now, as part of this, is that you and I have been talking a lot about men consuming women's bodies as a multi-billion-dollar, centuries-old industry, and that's really what the conversation that you opened up. But then there's this whole other issue, which is that, you know, 3 out of 10 of the people who are using Pornhub right now are women, like using it, like they're paying to use it to watch those images, 40% of which are violent against women. But for some, like, but also, like, I don't want to kink shame anybody, like,
no,
that's a thing, you know, like, and then what do you do when you're a woman and you're a consumer of this, you know, and you're participating in this? Like, what do we do with our shame and our confusion about that? How do we do that safely? You know, like, it's not only men who deal with the problem of desire. That's something that and by problem, I mean, it's not simple. Like, what am I supposed to do with these urges? Where am I going to get these needs met? How do I successfully exist as a civilized human being while at the same time dealing with this body that's just rampant with hormones and desires and fantasies and dreams and unfulfilled desire for pleasure? And so it's even more complex. Like, when you, like, it's even more complex because we are also part of the desire industry. And when you said that the very worst thing that you could be called when you were young was a whore, that's very true. But then we also a lot of times work really hard to present as being very sexy. So it's like, blah, like, how am I supposed to sort this out? And like, what, you know, a lot of my books are about, what do we do about the problem of desire? What do we do about the need for sex? Like, where, you know, how do we as women handle it? And yeah, so it's not simple, Sarah Jones. It's not simple.
I'm thinking about, in the signature of all things, was it a quim? Was that what it was called?
Yes, that's what her vagina, the Victorian term for a vagina.
How do you solve a problem like a quim? I mean, but how do you catch a quim and pin it down? Don't pin it down. Here's what I would say. This is it. This is the magic. Talking about it. Women, you know, yes, men, of course, and, you know, across the gender spectrum, but we as women in particular, I believe, because of centuries of Victorian, puritanical, again, religious shaming from wherever. I mean, there's a direct line to me between the control that some people in this country, my God, please everybody, if you're not registered to vote, go right now. Not while we're talking, but as soon as we're done. People who want to control women's bodies and tell us what to do with our reproductive lives. People who want to control the bodies of the women in Iran and tell them that they have to be covered. Like people, all of these conversations are directly connected. Our core, Amy Bond in the film, a lawyer who's also a champion pole dancer, talks about that connection between who I am and my core, kind of sacred sexuality. And that can get tricky because there are some people who say, oh, you're essentializing sex. And, as a sex worker, all I do is I go to work and I compartmentalize there. And then I go home and I, have sex with my boyfriend and it's real. I get that. But for me, my understanding is, as you said, hormones, chemicals in the body, neuroscience make it so that it's a little bit different to work with your body in that way. And so how are we managing, whether it's in the industry itself or just in our lives, an honest conversation about desire, about how stigma impacts so many of us. I remember hearing Black girls are like this, Latina, girls are going to be like this, white girls are this, freaky this, for whatever. And it's all superimposed on us by somebody else. Then we have to fashion an identity within the crucible of what someone else has, kind of forced on us. And we don't get to decide from the time we're little and kind of flourish into healthy sexuality. I hope that's changing. I haven't said this anywhere else, but I'm planning a sell by date, ongoing life, probably podcast. I'll be calling you, but
I'll be there.
Thank you. But to have this conversation, but I do think it starts with rigorous honesty, a concept you and I are both familiar with. We don't live in a society that's rigorously honest. We don't tell ourselves the truth about who we are or what we, who am I? How do I feel? What do I want? What do I need? We suppress those things. As soon as we have a feeling, it's wine o'clock, it's gummy o'clock, it's, doom scroll o'clock. We don't want to feel it. If we start to get willing to feel, we will then be able to experience our desire and have a both and experience of, I'm uncomfortable. Also, this is being really alive instead of numbed or suppressed or leaking out sideways because we are sent the message of, oh, what you're doing is deviant, you're kinky, whatever. And so then we have to hide it in the shadows. I'm hopeful that we can keep opening it all up.
You are a critical piece of that opening, Sarah Jones. I love you so much. I just want to say in conclusion, because I know you've got to go to your movie premiere.
I'm like, I don't want to go to my
right
premiere.
now. You've got to go right now. But I want to say all of this incredibly complicated talk about social structures and gender and desire and bodies and the control of money. I don't want it to take away from one aspect of this film that I want to celebrate, which is that you are the most extraordinary performer. And I've never seen a movie like this movie. This is a documentary that is also a piece of performance art. And I watched it with a beloved friend of mine who had never heard of your work. And she was so aghast. I mean, I've seen this reaction when people aren't used to you and they see you become these characters. And she was like, she just kept saying, how is she doing that? And she would say, every single character who she becomes, she kept saying, her facial structure is changing in front of my eyes. It's not just that her voice is changing. She's literally morphing into an entirely different human being. And this is the great gift that you have, is that you are so empathetic. I am too. We love people so much, we feel them so deeply that and it's a little bit of a problem sometimes. We're the permeable membrane, where we just sort of meld into them. But you've taken that incredible empathy and you've made it into a work of the highest art, and you are a master of this art. And I love watching you do what you do, and nobody can do what you do. Nobody could have made this film but you. I'm going to cry because I love you so much, because you're my beloved friend. I know how hard this was for you to make, and you've done such a great service for women, but you've also done such a great performance. So artist to artist, I just love what you've created, and I love you, and I celebrate you, and I want everybody to see Sell by Date. It's in the theaters starting this week. I'm on a text thread, which a bunch of my friends who are all like planning to go see it next Tuesday at a matinee in New York. I want you to all go see it, and perhaps you could tell people how they can see it if they're not in one of the cities where it's going to be on the big screen.
Yes. Okay. You choked me all the way up, but I'm fine. I can handle logistics now. But I just want to acknowledge what you just said, and namaste. That was cultural. I can hear a South Asian character going, that was cultural appropriation. Could you not get off of the live without it? Do you have to instantly, constantly be bringing? Anyway, so we'll leave that there for my South Asian friends to get at me later, but namaste. Anyway, what I want to say is if people do want to see the film, it'll be streaming. You can pre-order it now on Apple, and it'll be streaming November 8th after we've all voted. So celebrate your vote, and you're driving everyone you know to the polls, unless they're horrible, and then drive them away from the polls. I'm recommending that people drive their racist, sexist relatives away from the polls. But you can watch Sell by Date starting November 8th, and I can't wait to hear what everyone thinks. And Liz, you are just a conduit of all good things, and I love you so much.
I love you, Sarah. Have fun tonight. I'm so proud of you. And everybody send up a big bunch of hearts and love for Sarah. We all love you, and you're the best of us, of all of us. So have a beautiful, beautiful night, and be safe out there. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Liz. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.